Have you ever thought you knew someone only to discover a secret that changes everything? That's exactly what happened to Daniel Hayes, a wealthy widower who thought his life was finally under control. Until one ordinary evening, curiosity led him to follow his children's nanny after work. What he uncovered didn't just shock him, it reshaped his future in ways he never imagined. Daniel Hayes was a man who had it all. At least, that's what the world believed. He built his empire from scratch, turning a small tech startup into a global company worth billions. His picture-perfect life was complete with a beautiful wife, Grace, and two adorable children, Ethan and Lily. But when Grace passed away unexpectedly in a tragic car accident, Daniel's world shattered. Money couldn't mend the hole in his heart, nor could it soothe the sleepless nights or silence the guilt that haunted him. Guilt that he hadn't been home more often. Guilt that his last words to his wife had been rushed, careless, spoken in the middle of a work call. For months, Daniel barely functioned. His board of directors handled the company, his house staff ran the home, and his children were cared for by a young nanny named Emily. She was quiet, dependable, and seemed to understand the children in ways Daniel struggled to. Ethan and Lily adored Ethan for her patience in teaching him how to ride a bike without his mother cheering from the sidelines. And Lily for the way Emily braided her hair each morning just like Grace used to. Daniel noticed, of course, but he was too broken to think much about it. To him, Emily was just another employee doing her job. But then something changed. One evening, Daniel came home early and overheard Emily reading to the children. It wasn't just the story that caught his attention, it was the way her voice trembled when Lily asked about their mom. Instead of brushing the question aside, Emily closed the book, held both children close, and said, "Your mommy loved you more than the stars. And I'll always remind you of that love, no matter what." Daniel felt something stir inside him. Gratitude, maybe, or curiosity. Who was this woman who cared so deeply for children who weren't even her own? That's when the questions began. Emily never talked about her personal life. She always left the house at exactly 6 p.m. and never stayed late, no matter how chaotic things were. She refused offers of financial help, declining raises beyond her standard pay. And she never wore expensive clothes, never carried a smartphone, just an old flip phone that seemed out of place in Daniel's world of wealth. One Friday evening, driven by a mix of suspicion and curiosity, Daniel made a decision he never thought he would. When Emily waved goodbye to the children and stepped out into the night, Daniel followed. He kept a careful distance as she boarded a bus, something his staff never used. She sat quietly, holding a small paper bag. After 20 minutes, she got off in a neighborhood Daniel hadn't visited in decades, a run-down part of the city, where broken streetlights flickered and graffiti covered the walls. Daniel's chest tightened. What was his nanny doing here? Emily walked briskly, stopping in front of a shabby apartment complex. Daniel hid across the street, watching as she climbed 3 flights of stairs and entered an apartment whose door barely hung on its hinges. He debated leaving, feeling guilty for intruding on her privacy, but something urged him to stay. Through a cracked window, He saw her kneel beside a frail woman in a wheelchair. Emily unpacked the paper bag. It was filled with food, simple groceries she must have bought with her modest earnings. She cooked quietly, humming to the woman, who smiled weakly. Daniel's breath caught when he heard the woman whisper, "You work too hard, my love." It hit him. Emily wasn't just a nanny. She was a daughter caring for a sick mother, sacrificing everything to hold two families together, her own and his. Daniel went home that night with a storm of emotion: shame for misjudging her, admiration for her strength, and a painful awareness of how selfish his grief had made him. For weeks, he couldn't shake what he'd seen. He noticed more how Emily skipped meals sometimes, how she wore the same worn-out shoes. She never once asked for more, despite giving so much. Finally, Daniel confronted her not with anger, but with compassion. One morning after breakfast, when the children were busy playing, he said softly, "Emily, why didn't you tell me?" She froze, her eyes wide. "Tell you what?" she asked, though her trembling hands betrayed her. Daniel spoke gently. "About your mother. Everything you're carrying alone." Emily's lips quivered as tears filled her eyes. She had worked so hard to keep her world separate, afraid of losing her job, afraid of pity, afraid of being seen as weak. But Daniel's voice was not judgmental. It was kind. "You've been giving my children the love I couldn't. You've been carrying us all. Emily, please, let me help carry you." From that day, things began to change. Daniel arranged the best medical care for Emily's mother, moving her into a private facility where she could receive constant attention. He increased Emily's salary, though she protested at first, insisting she didn't want charity. But what truly shifted was Daniel himself. For the first time since Grace's passing, he felt alive again, not because he had found someone to replace his wife, but because he had discovered the beauty of selfless love through Emily. Over time, Daniel and Emily's bond deepened. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, but a steady, healing connection built on trust and respect. The children saw at first how Daniel smiled more, how Emily's laughter filled the house, how dinners felt less like obligations and more like family again. When Emily's mother passed away peacefully months later, Daniel was by her side, holding her hand just as she had once held his children's. The years that followed were not without challenges. Daniel had to learn to balance his business empire with his new role as a present father. Emily had to learn how to accept love after years of giving it away. But together, they built something extraordinary, not perfect, not without scars, but real. And in the end, Daniel often thought back to that night he followed Emily. He realized it wasn't just curiosity that led him there, was fate, because what he discovered wasn't just Emily's secret. It was a truth he had forgotten in his grief, that family isn't defined by wealth or perfection, but by love, sacrifice, and the courage to care for one another when life feels unbearable. So, the next time you think you know someone, remember Daniel's story. Sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest burdens, and sometimes following your curiosity can lead you straight to the love and healing you never knew you needed.